Hello, everyone, and welcome to Education Commission of the State's Education Trends and Governor's 2026 State of the State Addresses. I'm Jose Munoz, and as President of Education Commission of the States, it is my pleasure to welcome you to ECS Live. For over 20 years, our amazing policy team has been reviewing and analyzing each governor's State of the State addresses and reporting out on the education policy issues and priorities the governors are speaking about. Our state's tracker, which is available on our website, is a great tool for digging deeper into the education policy proposals discussed in our brief, which is coming out on March 31st and will be emailed to everyone who is registered. If this is your first time attending an ECS webinar, they're designed to provide you with the tools and resources that enhance everyone's ability to address key challenges in state education policy. Now, the Education Commission of the States was created by states through the Interstate Compact for Education out of a shared belief that states are strongest when they learn together. And in a moment of growing complexity and rising expectations, the Compact established ECS as a mechanism to share information, develop policy alternatives, and stimulate state action, provoking ideas without prescribing them. A purpose that remains as vital today as it was more than 60 years ago. Now, we draw our knowledge of state policy from multiple sources: legislative bill tracking, monitoring executive orders, tasks, and commissions, and importantly, we have a state relations team who has underground conversations with state leaders and agency staff, ensuring what we share reflects real-time insights from across the states. And we do this through research and reporting and convening and counseling states, analyzing emerging trends and bringing state leaders together to share their insights, learn from one another, and inform action in their own states. We use webinars like this to share about how states approach education policy issues. Now, each year, governors outline their priorities and set the tone for the legislative sessions ahead. And education is consistently one of the most prominent areas they address, spanning from early childhood through workforce. And by analyzing these state of the state addresses, we're able to identify where states are focusing their efforts, surface emerging trends, and highlight opportunities for shared learning across states. This is one of our most popular webinars each year, and we're looking forward to a great discussion with the ECS team and our partner at National Governors Association. Let me introduce you to our ECS policy team. We have Lauren Bloomquist, who's a senior policy analyst, and joining her is Hina Kubayama, who's also a policy analyst, and they'll be providing an information summary of the governor's top education priorities in 2026 State of the State addresses. We've also built some time for Q&A session that will be moderated by Joel Moore, our ECS State Relations Director, later on. But in addition to our skilled team, I'm so pleased to have Seth Gerson from the National Governors Association join us today. Seth serves as Program Director in the NGA Center for Best Practices, where he works on K-12 education issues. Now let's welcome our presenters as I hand off to Seth to start with the top trends for this year. Seth?
All right, thanks, Jose. Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you today. And once again, thanks to Jose and the ECS team, Joel, Lauren, Hina. As always, it was great for Devin Neer, our policy analyst on the K-12 team, and me to partner with you to develop and release this joint resource for the seventh straight year. So just a little bit about the National Governors Association before we go into the trends. Our membership are the governors in all 50 states and 5 territories. And since 1908, we've supported governors primarily by providing a bipartisan safe space, a safe forum for them to connect with each other, to exchange ideas, share promising practices, strategies they're using, challenges they're facing. It's an opportunity for them to share what's working and what's not across party and state lines. And there's a spirit of bipartisanship that infuses all of our work, and that starts with our leadership, which is always a current Democratic governor and a current Republican governor, with our current chair being Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma and our vice chair, Governor Wes Moore of Maryland. And we have an executive committee that's evenly represented by current Republican and Democratic governors, and that oversees all of our work as well. So now let's move into the education trends in this year's State of the State addresses. 45 State of the State addresses were included in this year's analysis. If a governor only gave an inaugural address, we've included that in the analysis as well to give more of a full picture of where governors' trends and priorities are. For 2026, the top education trends in governor's state of the states were first, academic supports and achievement, second, K-12 funding, third, career and technical education and post-secondary and workforce alignment, fourth, early care and learning, and fifth, teacher workforce. Now, this is the first time that academic supports and achievement is the number one trend, with 35 governors highlighting this area in their State of the State addresses. This trend includes such areas as literacy, math, and graduation rates. So, for example, in her address, Governor Kim Reynolds of Iowa elevated the state's efforts to apply evidence-based principles to reading and math instruction, and she applauded notable gains in reading proficiency, science proficiency, and attendance statewide. There continues to be this strong foundation that all of you, I'm sure, on the call have seen of bipartisan gubernatorial urgency, interest, and investment in advancing the science of reading and evidence-based literacy instruction, particularly driven by results from the 2022 and the 2024 NAEP tests, showing continuing nationwide declines in fourth and eighth grade reading in nearly every state. And so you continue to see this focus show up in State of the States this year as well. So, as such, in her address, Governor Laura Kelly of Kansas also spoke about literacy, praising her recently enacted Blueprint for Literacy, an initiative aimed at ensuring all Kansas students read at or above grade level. She also shared that the state's graduation rates have reached an all-time high. In her address, Governor Janet Mills of Maine pointed to her $10 million investment to encourage schools to adopt science of reading strategies and her leadership to advance Maine reading and math action plans to strengthen students' reading and math scores. The governor also touted Maine's high graduation rate. And in Utah, Governor Spencer Cox called for strong literacy standards as well as individualized support for struggling readers. And I'll just mention a brief update that since that address in January, Governor Cox has already worked with the Utah legislature to advance this work over the past few months, with 5 new laws passed in March to strengthen early literacy instruction, expand literacy coaching and professional development, and require individualized reading plans and targeted support for students. So lots of action in the literacy area. You see this with math, and you see the highlight of the graduation rates increasing. So with that, I'll pass it to Lauren Bloomquist on the ECS team to introduce the next trend. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions after Lauren and Hina's presentation. Lauren?
Thank you, Seth. Hello, everyone. K-12 funding has been among the top 3 trends for the past 10 years. This year, it's our number 2 trend, with 32 governors mentioning it. Governors often highlight increased education funding as a priority. In some instances, governors ask for legislatures to consider investing in specific student groups, and in other instances, ask for across-the-board investments. In addition to proposed increases for 2026, governors also celebrated increases from prior years, and several praised proposals that fully funded education budgets. And finally, in many states, governors highlighted the importance of updating funding formulas to address students and schools with the greatest need. Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont announced plans to sign an executive order creating the Blue Ribbon Commission on K-12 education, which will take a bottom-up look at education with a focus on an updated funding strategy, considerations for building on last session's special education funding, and for improving district costs. Calls to revisit Delaware's decades-old funding formula were raised by Governor Matt Meyer. He praised the Public Education Funding Commission for the historic progress it made last year in developing recommendations to improve the public education funding system. He urged the legislature to pass a fair funding formula that directs resources based on students' actual needs. And in Nebraska, Governor Jim Pillen highlighted worthy investments, ensuring that classroom environments are ripe for learning for Nebraska's elementary and secondary students. And after a historic investments of more than $2.5 billion in public schools, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee proposed an additional $340 million in the budget. Moving on to our next trend, we have career and technical education along with workforce development alignment. This takes our number 3 spot with at least 31 governors addressing the topic. Governors emphasize the importance of creating pathways that connect students to meaningful career opportunities and provide hands-on learning experiences. They also highlighted the value of pathways as well as those that lead to well-paying careers. Governors pointed to apprenticeships and internships as ways for young people to gain work experience, build real-world skills, and prepare for in-demand jobs while earning income. They also noted strong business and industry partnerships that are a critical key to the success of providing these learning opportunities. In addition, there were several governors who highlighted specific investments in career and technical education. In Massachusetts, Governor Maura Haley highlighted the benefits of apprenticeships as a way to provide hands-on training and a direct path to a great career. She stated that over the next 10 years, Massachusetts would have 100,000 apprentices in building trades, nursing, early education, and technology. These apprenticeships will provide more people with an opportunity for a great career. They will also create a workforce that meets the needs of businesses in the state. Next up, we have Rhode Island's Governor Daniel McKee, who highlighted growing CTE programs and proposed Rhode Island's first dedicated CTE bond to build and upgrade classrooms across the state, giving students the space, equipment, and resources they need to succeed in high-demand careers and get good-paying jobs. In January, South Dakota Governor Larry Roden outlined legislation to establish a state apprenticeship agency to provide greater flexibility in structuring apprenticeships. That legislation was enacted in February. He also highlighted prioritizing the growth of the state's technical colleges to help steer kids toward high-demand fields. And our last example in the CTE workforce development area is Wyoming's Governor Mark Gordon, who highlighted the value of CTE programs for students. Students taking a variety of classes, from computer-aided design to taxidermy, allow those students to use real-world problem-solving to explore the career opportunities. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Hina, who will cover our final 2 trends.
Thanks, Lauren. Our next trend is early care and education, or ECE, which remains in the top issues mentioned by governors for the 4th year in a row. Improving affordability and access to high-quality early care and education programs was mentioned by at least 26 governors this year. Many governors talked about the rising costs of childcare for working families, celebrated increased ECE funding, or committed to new programs aimed at increasing affordability. In addition, many governors stressed the importance of increasing access to pre-K programs for students across their states, with some celebrating successful pre-K expansions over the past year, and others announcing plans to achieve universal access to pre-K in the future. Indiana Governor Mike Braun committed in his address to exploring ways to invest in lowering the costs of childcare, specifically mentioning that he hopes to see a program where businesses play a role in making childcare more affordable. New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham emphasized the importance of early childhood education in promoting physical health and well-being, language and cognitive development, communication skills, general knowledge, and more. She also celebrated offering universal child care and establishing and expanding child care centers, training, and support for educators. She highlighted increasing the annual distribution from the Early Childhood Trust Fund in 2025, which led to an additional 10,000 children enrolled. Governor Lujan Grisham also called for an additional $160 million increase for universal child care. In her address, New York Governor Kathy Hochul also discussed several ECE initiatives. She announced a plan to establish universal child care for families across the state and a community-wide child care pilot program, which will provide year-round, full-day affordable care for newborns to 3-year-olds. In the interest of improving affordability, Governor Hochul also committed to work with employers and improve tax incentives for those who invest in child care benefits. In addition, she announced a commitment to achieving universal pre-K for every 4-year-old by 2028, and she shared that the state will fully fund the first 2 years of New York City Mayor Mamdani's Universal 2Care program, while also helping the city achieve Universal 3K. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster noted that the expansion of full-day 4K in 2021 led to increased enrollment in public schools, private child care centers, and private schools. He also highlighted that every public school district except one now offers full-day 4K. In addition, Governor McMaster emphasized that enrolling in full-day 4K leaves children from low-income households better prepared for kindergarten, and he urged the General Assembly to adopt universal full-day 4K for all children, regardless of household income. The final trend we identified in this year's Governor's State of the State addresses is the teacher workforce. At least 25 governors mentioned teacher workforce issues, including teacher recruitment, retention, and compensation. Governors' addresses celebrated teacher salary increases from the past year and announced further investments in teacher salaries and retirement benefits in coming years. In addition, many governors talked about state programs aimed at improving educator recruitment and retention, including new or expanded certification pathways, teacher housing initiatives, and other educator supports. Regarding teacher compensation, Alabama Governor Kay Ivey highlighted providing paid parental leave for teachers and proposing a 2% pay increase for teachers in the state budget. Regarding educator recruitment, she noted that 50,000 more credentialed teachers have been added to the state's workforce, and she further endorsed a measure to create a temporary teaching certificate pathway for veterans. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp celebrated surpassing his 2018 goal of increasing teacher pay by $5,000, instead raising teacher pay by $9,500 since the start of his term. He also celebrated a nearly 28% increase in the starting salary for a Georgia teacher and announced an additional one-time pay supplement of $2,000 for all state employees, including teachers. Hawaii Governor Josh Green promised to expand the use of state lands to provide workforce housing to teachers, among other high-demand professions. And finally, Maryland Governor Wes Moore highlighted the role teachers play in supporting strong academic growth and celebrated cutting the teacher vacancy rate in half over 3 years. He also announced a new academic excellence program through which academic coaches will support Maryland educators with the tools, lessons, and resources they need.
All right, thanks, y'all, and thanks so much, Seth, Lauren, Hina, for all of that incredible perspective. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Joel Moore, and I'm the Director of State Relations here at Education Commission of the States. Happy to be here to help facilitate the question and answer portion of the webinar. Some of y'all have already dropped some questions into the chat. Thank you so much for that. But if you haven't yet and you have a question or two for our three panelists, please go ahead and add those in, and we will get to as many as we can over the next few minutes. To kick us off, wanted to ask, with as many years as y'all have been doing this, studying these trends, I'm interested in how what you've seen has changed. Are there any recent trends that have kind of dipped out of the larger conversation?
Can go ahead and take that one, Joel. I would say that there was a clear demarcation this year between the top five trends and the other trends that we've seen in the past. A couple of the trends that we have seen and that are familiar to a lot of people that were kind of right on the edge were post-secondary affordability and financial aid. And we had several governors mentioning financial aid as well as free college. And then the next topic under that was school choice. And we saw about the same number of mentions as last year, but again, there were just so many other governors who mentioned the academic achievement and student supports, and then those other five trends that we saw kind of bubble up to the top. And then finally, what we called what we saw in technology last year were quite a few mentions of cell phone bans in schools. And so we had, again, right about the same number as last year. This year, they were pretty much evenly split between those governors calling for bans and then those governors celebrating the bans that had been enacted or implemented over the last year. And I know NGA has done a lot of work on those cell phone bans, and so I'd like to give Seth the opportunity to talk about those.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. I think that is, a change from last year for sure. We saw a good amount of cell phone mentions last year. I don't think that means the issue's gone away in any way. There's still a lot of bipartisan movement and momentum on this issue across the country, with governors certainly concerned about the impact not only of phones but social media on student academics and mental health. Um, right now where we're knowing that that bipartisan push has happened, we've partnered with Dr. Angela Duckworth, a UPenn professor of psychology, at in her book that she's had out there, Grip, but has helped informed governor's efforts in this area. And she has a Phones in Focus project, and it's just is leading a team of researchers better understand what school policies, whether it's bell to bell or instructional, or what that positive learning environment can look like that best supports academic learning, student well-being overall. And so as she learns more about which policies are making the most impact, we're sharing that information with governors' offices and making sure that that informs the development and implementation of these policies in the most impactful way. She has a short survey that she sent out. She's targeted to educators in particular across the country. And so we've helped to facilitate some of those surveys, get that information in, and again, make sure that that's an informing governor's offices along the way. Some of her initial findings, just to share, and we can talk more about this as the call goes on, but the stricter the policy, certainly in how you're restricting student access to the phones, does show an increase in teacher satisfaction, decreased student distraction, and overall, just a better student engagement. And she also found that we found really interesting where phones are kept makes a big difference as well. The farther that students are from their phones, the more correlation with that increased teacher satisfaction, increased engagement. So we're learning more and more. It's a 2-year project, and as we learn more, you can go to our website. We'll be sharing those findings on there. There's already a commentary up that has governors and where they've moved on these on cell phone policies bipartisanly over the last number of months. But again, there'll be some more updates in the coming months as well. Thanks.
Joel, you're muted.
Gosh, sorry about that. Thank you. One of the questions related to the digital devices and digital literacy is governor action on artificial intelligence. Did anybody bring that up in the addresses, and what did that look like for them?
Sure, I can take this one. We have seen a lot of legislative action in some of our other work, our legislative bill tracking around AI, and particularly AI in education. While governors did bring it up, it did not fall within our top trends. However, we did hear a few governors talking about their concerns regarding the impacts of AI on children. For example, the governor of Florida did express that concern about the negative effects of AI chatbots, in particular, being linked to teen suicides in his address. Another governor that mentioned it was Governor Hochul in New York, who proposed protections for social media users under the age of 18 by blocking direct messages with automatic privacy settings and disabling AI chatbots entirely.
And I'll just add that we've seen governors really put together task forces across a number of agencies, not just education. And so, really looking at the implications across many different areas and trying to provide the support from NGA in that way that's a holistic, how do you build the infrastructure and governance for decision making as the AI tools and technologies advance, knowing that there's a clear vision for how those decisions can get made and safeguarding the new AI being so critical. There's been so much state guidance out there as we've seen some of those trends, certainly on the responsible use of AI literacy, using it for more personalized instruction and getting that time feedback for students, and as well as professional develop for educators in the AI area. I'll also mention that our NGA workforce team just launched a working group on AI and the future of work to provide opportunities for governors' offices to learn from each other and experts on ways the states can prepare for the impact of AI on the labor market. And so the working group held their first meeting just last week, and there's again an overview of that discussion up on the website on the NGA website.
Thanks, Seth. One of the questions or several of the questions that have come in are around numeracy, and there's been clearly a lot of focus on the literacy side of things, but what is the movement towards the math and STEM fields that y'all are seeing?
Yeah, this has been another big area that I think, within that academic supports, um, first topic area was certainly a big one. A lot of work on literacy, as we talked about a little earlier in the call, but definitely seeing bipartisan movement on math as well. A lot of work that's been done by Governor Ivey over her period of time in office. She really got this started early on, even pre-pandemic, with her Numeracy Act. So hundreds of math coaches in schools across the state to help students with math achievement has made a big difference. Governor McKee in Rhode Island has a Math Matters campaign. He's put about $3 million to there using after school and summer the really enrichment programs as a way through their 365 Rhode Island program to provide some of those supports where they started on chronic absenteeism, now doing some chronic absenteeism and math as a good strategy there. Governor Spanberger in her address, new governor, really using that to say she wants to push a more robust focus on math as well. And Governor Sanders, I would point to as well as part of that Learns Act when she first came into office, not only looking at literacy, but again, those individual math intervention plans and then using tutoring as a real step to engaging students on math and trying to increase their abilities.
And I think somewhat related to that question, did graduation requirements come up? I know that there's conversations about how those might be updated to include more career-driven requirements. What is that looking like around the country?
I would say that while we didn't see information about changing graduation requirements, we did see a lot of governors highlighting rising graduation rates. Again, in that academic achievement section, that was our number one trend. We do see in other areas, not necessarily in the governor state of the states, but we do see states looking at broadening student pathways. And I think you could also make that connection to the CTE and post-secondary workforce alignment, where governors are really thinking about how can we help students move, through the K-12 system, and then what do those post-secondary opportunities look like? And so again, partnering with business and industry to make sure that there are multiple pathways for students to find success after the 12th grade that include careers as well as college.
Thanks, Lauren. We have a question about school meals. I know that that's been a priority along with other student health related topics over the last couple of years. What did we see on school meals or anything else that you might like to bring to the conversation?
So we did see we did see some mentions in our health and our on our wellness section, but again, not quite as many as we've seen in the past. When it came to school meals, I believe there were over, I think there were around 5 governors that mentioned school meals. A lot of them highlighted the fact that they had free school meal programs, and then we did see a couple of mentions about proposed school meals. And that really, the universal school meal program was really what took up the bulk of health mentions when it came to governor's state of the state addresses.
Neat. We do have a question in here about K-12 funding and weights for student groups and whether we have information on that. Yes, our 50-state comparison on K-12 education funding that's available at ecs.org on the website does have specific information on a bunch of different student groups listed by data point in there. Happy to forward that to you after the call as well. Let's see. What else do we need to do? Okay, I guess one of the big questions, no surprise to anybody that a lot of conversation around the federal changes and proposed changes that are coming at education, things like, for example, the scholarship granting organizations provision in HR 1. To what degree do y'all think that these federal issues showed up in State of the State addresses, or was this a was more of a unspoken thing for the State of the States?
I would just say here, Joel, while it didn't show up as much this year on the ESA programs, certainly, given the new federal uh, education scholarship program that was signed into law last July, there's a lot of interest in that program and how it gets rolled out. Um, at NGA, we've been taking more of a nuts and bolts approach to supporting governors' offices in this area, ensuring they have the latest information from the Treasury Department to make the most informed decisions on whether governors will opt into the program. Thus far, more than 25 governors have signaled that they would opt their states into the program. But again, governors have until January 1st, 2027 to do so, to opt in. Most of the remaining governors are really waiting for that Treasury Department regulations, the final guidance to be able to come out to decide whether to opt in, getting some clarification about the parameters of gubernatorial oversight or regulation of scholarship granting organizations, the SGOs, in their states, and the extent of the flexibility on what the funds can be used for or how the funds can be targeted to which students, which populations. So again, sort of in a wait and see for a number of our members. Although, and again, a number about 25 have already signaled that they'll opt in.
I guess a follow-up to that one, Seth. What impact do you think that the upcoming elections had on these state of the states? I know that we're looking at 38 governors, including DC, who are up for election this year.
Yeah, 39 gubernatorial elections. So you've got 36 states and 3 territories. So our most since 2018. And so at least 20 new governors. So really bipartisan group there that we expect as a big class to come in. You have a really good chunk of reelects as well. And still about 3 governors that are still trying to decide whether to go for a second or more term. So that's still out there. And as we get closer to the primaries, we see always every time what we'll be watching for is, not only is the gubernatorial changes, but then how the chiefs, state education chiefs may change across the country. What's the trifectas, right? The match between the governors and the legislature, and how does that impact their ability to navigate that and get some of their policies and priorities done. And again, the State Board of Education changes as well. So thinking about that whole constellation and what may change, given the amount of change that we expect in this year's election as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I One more question for y'all. Had a question about different student populations and how they may have come up in speeches. Groups like military connected youth, on how students in the foster system. Did anything come up for those specific student populations or others?
I think in the K-12 funding section, definitely special student populations came up, and especially when it came to formula funding. So in terms of how do we weight different students who have different needs when it comes to school finance. We also saw at least one mention of the success of the foster youth population when it came to graduation rates. But I would say primarily we saw those kind of special groups of students mentioned in the finance and funding space.
Great. Question going back to the teacher preparation questions that we had several of. Can you share a little bit more about any sort of explicit commentary around teacher preparation or the state of the teacher workforce, or was this largely around salary and benefits and improving working conditions for folks?
Sure. So the biggest chunk of mentions of the teacher workforce were focused more on recruitment, retention, and compensation, but there were mentions of teacher preparation and some addresses as well. Um, for example, Governor Whitmer of Michigan did mention training more teachers during her tenure. She was celebrating that more teachers were coming into the workforce. South Dakota Governor Roden also referenced support for paraprofessionals in earning full teacher certification while working in classrooms and highlighted the teacher apprentice pathway as an alternative preparation route. Like I mentioned in my discussion of Alabama Governor Kay Ivey, she talked a little bit about creating an alternative certification pathway for veterans. So there was a little bit of a focus on preparing and certifying teachers. It just wasn't as large of a topic as the compensation and retention side of the discussion this year.
Thank you so much, Hina. Turning it to something that's maybe a little less attractive some of the times. Data, always an important issue and certainly top of mind for department folks around the country right now. Did that come up in any of the governor's State of the State addresses? What does that look like? What are the particular concerns around data?
Well, thanks, Joel. This makes me think of a project we have going right now with a bipartisan group of governors' offices. So, really looking at how do you build data dashboards and look at student success and readiness across many different facets. So, not only academics, as we talked about, math and literacy, but also thinking about post-secondary and workforce readiness, civic engagement, and overall mental health and well-being. This really branches off of Governor Jared Polis of Colorado. He was our chair last year, and he had a Let's Get Ready project where we really dove deep into that measurement mismatch between the skills, knowledge, and traits that we want our students to have when they graduate from high school and what we currently invest in and measure. And so it introduced a framework and a roadmap that was released last July at our summer meeting and is available on the website. Really thinking about ways that you can use that roadmap to chart where governors can go to develop these dashboards, look at the progress that can be made, and interventions then that can be done to ensure student progress in each of those different areas. More to come. It's about an 18-month project, and again, 4 Democratic, 3 Republican. They'll be working over these number of months to develop that dashboard of metrics and tailor to each state's context, policies, and priorities. Again, share it on the website, and we'll continue to update that as we make progress over these next 18 months.
Thanks, Seth. And we have dropped a link to that Let's Get Ready project in the chat here. Also, I want to celebrate ECS's recent work on the Education to Workforce framework, which relates to state data systems. A lot of great information in there that we would love to connect with you about. So please feel free to reach out with any questions on that to either Seth or to ECS. Thinking about student groups outside of the K-12 population, any word on adult learners, priorities in that part of the conversation?
Yeah, as we look at CTE and workforce development alignment, we did see a number of mentions for apprenticeships. And apprenticeships typically, when a state has regulations around that, they typically include some of those adult learners, so folks who are outside of the K-12 system. Governor Shapiro out of Pennsylvania, he also specifically mentioned adult learners in his address. But overall, we see that kind of adult learner population in that CTE and workforce space.
Thanks, Lauren. Finally, I guess we will wrap it up with yeah, a couple more questions came in. One that I'll throw out for you right now. Anything you've heard about curriculum, specifically related to history, and specific populations in that context?
Sure. There weren't a ton of mentions of curriculum in State of the State addresses this year, but we did have at least one governor talking about Hmong and Asian American history curriculum in schools. That was Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers. He talked about signing a bipartisan bill to require this history curriculum for all students in Wisconsin.
Thank you so much. We did have a question in here about community college bachelor degrees. Did that come up in any of the State of the States?
I'm not sure that it came up in the State of the States, but I do know in some of our other work and in some of our other bill tracking, we have seen a couple of states bring up in their legislation community colleges that are offering bachelor's degrees. But I don't think that that kind of came to the top of the list when it came to what governors were talking about in terms of community college and access.
I think related to that, thanks, Lauren. We've seen quite a bit of conversation around 3-year bachelor's degrees in addition to community college bachelor degrees. But again, that's probably more legislative level than state of the states conversation. Thanks, everybody, for those wonderful questions. That was a great conversation. A huge round of applause to our presenters, Seth at the National Governors Association. It's amazing, as always, to get to work with you. And then Lauren Bloomquist and Hina Kuyama from the Education Commission of the state's policy team. As a reminder, the written brief on governor's education priorities and state of the state addresses comes out next week. That's going to be emailed to each of you and follow up to this webinar. Also, want y'all to remember that ECS and also NGA are here to support you in your work. All of ECS's resources, including our policy guides and 50 state comparisons, they're all available to each of you and your teams at no cost on our website, ecs.org. And if there's ever any way we can assist, please just feel free to reach out directly to your state liaison, whose information can be found on our website as well. And I do want to happy to announce our National Forum on Education Policy will be taking place July 8th through 10th at the JW Marriott Hotel in the Washington, D.C. Registration for this event is now open as of today. This year's National Forum highlights the Compact Renewed, which is a reaffirmation of the Interstate Compact for Education, ECS's implementing document, and that compact's enduring purpose to stimulate partnership between the political and professional leadership in the states when the context and the stakes are so high for students and their families and for states. Got incredible content planned for you, including 56 concurrent sessions to choose from on topics across that early learning to post-secondary and workforce spectrum. Great event, and I'm excited to see a lot of y'all in there in person. It does sell out every single year, so please register early to secure your spot and meet with the state's or the nation's education policymakers and be a part of this vital conversation. We really hope that you're leaving today's webinar with at least one idea that your state can put into action right away. And again, if you've got questions or requests related to the session, please feel free to reach out directly to me or to today's presenters. We are adding our emails into the chat. As always, this recorded session will be shared in your post-event email and made available for viewing on ECS's YouTube page as well. With that, I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank everybody for taking part in the conversation, coming with questions. Thank you, and we are adjourned. Have a great afternoon, everybody.